Hello everyone and welcome to this special weekday Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising, with Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters across the franchised and independent dealer sectors.
Hello and welcome from me, Curtis Hutchinson and Philip Nothard, to this special weekday Motor Trade Radio podcast interview. Today, we're delighted to welcome to the pod Chris Ashton-Green, CEO and founder of Regit.Cars. Chris is joining us to share some of his insight on key trends in vehicle aftersales across the OEM sector. So welcome to the pod, Chris. Great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks so much, Curtis. Thanks so much, Philip. It's a pleasure to be on.
No, it's been a long time waiting. I mean, we obviously talk on a very regular basis, and we've met up quite a few times over the years. And I think you probably you'd probably not feel that you're a good friend of Curtis. You probably listen to us that much on the podcast, haven't you, over the years?
We're virtual friends, aren't we, Chris?
Absolutely. I feel like I've known you all my automotive life.
The Saturday morning download. But no, I mean, it's great to have you on, and I think I know where Regit has been, where it is today, and the sort of the journey. But I mean, many listeners may not actually know what you actually do and what you're involved with. So, shall we start off giving if you can give a bit of a brief background on yourself and outline a little bit about what Regit.Cars does in the sector?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Phil. So obviously my background is automotive pretty much most of my life. Worked back in the day in my previous life in the franchise dealer arena. So worked with brands and dealer groups, such as Ford, Mitsubishi, Vauxhall. Spent a long time at Smith Knight Fay, Volkswagen Audi Group. Moved on to BMW and then decided probably 20 years ago that I wanted to work for myself. So started retailing and trading cars. Was pretty much an early adopter to the internet, I think. We started off obviously with motoring.co.uk, which we still own, which was a classified website. And we rebranded and repivoted into Regit, which is a digital garage for car owners. So in short, what Regit does is we take a registration number and an email address from a car owner, and we create a personalized digital garage of themselves and their car. And effectively what we do is we provide information, content, tools, so things as free valuations, ULEZ checks, there's a little bit of gamification in there. And the four mantras of what we do is then we help them buy, we help them sell, we help them maintain, and we keep them legal. By having the amount of car owners that we have, which is circa 2.5 million plus now, that enables us to work with OEMs and their advertising agencies across new car display, approved used, after sales display, new and used car lead generation, and also email marketing to identify lapsed owners and vehicle owners that need service and MOT work, etc., on behalf of OEMs and their dealer groups.
Now, Chris, there's lots of challenges facing dealers in after sales, especially as they look to retain their traditional ICE business whilst also embracing EVs. What's your data telling you about how OEMs are promoting after sales and how they're actually addressing the different needs of EVs?
Yeah, so it's a really great question, and it's extremely challenging within our industry at the moment for many different reasons, which you guys touch on every week. But just focusing on retention, OEMs are losing market share in terms of some of the older legacy ones. Likes of Ford and Vauxhall, I think even BMW last year. Market share is down over the years. Now, I appreciate that some of the messages are, well, we're focusing on profit and not volume. And obviously getting rid of probably too many derivatives is a good thing, but that's still not to say that they don't need to focus on their existing consumer. And certainly when that car changes hands. So what OEMs are extremely good at is obviously know the first owner of a vehicle, but once that vehicle changes hands, either second owner, third owner, fourth owner, fifth owner, and so on, that vehicle is lost out of the dealer network. the OEM has no sight of it. And as a business, that's where we come in. We help OEMs identify those lapsed owners in order to get them back into their franchise dealer network, in order to retain the customer, retain market share, and make sure that they can hopefully keep them for their next vehicle. But that is challenging in itself now, and I think it needs to be a huge focus, especially with the challenger brands that are now coming in and wanting to take that user, certainly from an EV perspective.
But because I mean, retention is just so important, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
are you finding that OEMs are building in that retention earlier than maybe they used to in regards to how they look at after sales?
Yeah, I think there's a refocus on it now. Certainly, before COVID, there was a focus around it, probably not as strong as it would be, I think, with the new car market being so buoyant as it was a few years ago. And we were, I think, circa doing, 3 million a year or whatever it was, 2.5 million a year. There was probably not as big a focus. Then COVID came, then the rise of obviously buy online. And I think it's almost been forgotten about a little bit over the last 2 or 3 years. And then all of a sudden the Chinese come, and the Chinese and the various challenger brands that are coming are now looking to obviously capitalize on that, capitalize on trying to attract that user to their brand, which is effectively means an OEM is going to lose market share, which means they're going to lose obviously work into the service and parts department. And I just think that's something they just cannot afford to do. So we are starting to see now a big refocus on it, actually, in terms of some of the briefs that we're receiving from OEMs around after sales recently.
And I mean, we talk a lot about the cost of living, and there's probably insight that you can see within your platform about maybe how search criteria has changed, or the things around the MOT and servicing and insurance and things like that. But I mean, what impact do you think the cost of living crisis is having on dealers in terms of consumers potentially putting off work on their vehicles?
Yeah, I think if we were to speak to some dealer groups, they'd probably say that their bays and their workload is full every day. I think there's lots of challenges around this where even customers who want some work doing are struggling with dealer groups and brands where part supply is a problem. I think some customers are having to put off work whether they like it or not, but I also think ultimately, I think car owners are also saying, do I really need to do that now? Can I wait a little bit longer? Just myself this week, my service light's gone off. I'm realizing that actually need to get in for a service, probably need some work doing. I'll probably just delay it for a few more weeks, actually, because I'm not doing too many miles, and I've got other financial commitments and responsibilities. So I think that's generally a thought process, and our data does say, as you know, Phil, because we've done some of this with Cox Automotive many times for the auto focus reports. People are keeping their cars longer, I think. So there's lots of challenges to navigate currently. Cost of living crisis, EVs, do a buy, do a sell, do a maintain. What should we do? So yeah, it's extremely challenging.
And I mean, the work that you do in is sort of that intermediate between the OEMs and identifying those lapsed customers or keeping that engagement with customers. I mean, what are some of the best practices in terms of that after sales messaging that the OEMs are trying to push on behalf of their network with the dealers out to the customers?
Do you know what? That's a really relevant question, because they're actually starting to go back to basics a little bit, or are actually starting to promote what they're good at, probably over and above, some independence. So when you look at the investment that they've put into these beautiful showrooms, what's obviously really important is that they focus on what they're good at. So, things like loan cars, coffees, waiting rooms, free Wi-Fi's, the warmth of a beautiful showroom where they can promote all these things. So while we service your car, obviously work from home is big. Come and work from our showroom. I think that for me, when you look at what what the dealer groups have, which is those beautiful gin policies, as we call them. I think they need to turn them into destinations. If we were to ask consumers who bought a car, 50, 60, 70,000 pound car from, say, Mercedes-Benz, and you ask them, what is the benefit of buying a vehicle from there, in terms of once you take delivery of it, you drive it away, what are the added benefits? How do they get you back? How do they retain you? Surely there should be some benefits for existing customers to say, hey, come and work from home here. We'll valet your car. We'll price your car. We'll do some upselling. We'll let you take a test drive for an hour, etc., etc. I think there's so many more things that dealers can do to turn those lovely showrooms into destinations to retain customers. That's what I would be doing if I had some of the beautiful infrastructure that they have.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on a special weekday episode of Motor Trade Radio, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising.
Now, Chris, as you say, you work very closely with a lot of OEMs and their agencies. Do you have any examples of what individual brands are doing to promote and encourage after-sales retention? Are there any brands that are particularly impressing you at the moment?
Yeah, I think just going back to what I just said previously, there's a little bit of crossover here, but we do see that there's a really big focus for some of the smaller market share brands. So when you look at like Hyundai, Kia, they're really big focus on after sales, really big focus on retention. I think in terms of communicating with their customers, over that whole car owning life cycle, I think they're some of the best at it. I think they actually realise that they've grown them. MG is another one. I mean, if you look at MG's market share from, where they were, 0.38% to 3.8%. I mean, it's a phenomenal story, I think, what MG have done, and Hyundai and Kia. And I think some of the other brands need to really take stock and take a look at what they're doing in terms of how they communicate. And they're very, very good at that. I think nurturing them and educating them and informing them down the EV path. Again, MG are good at it, Hyundai are good at it, Kia are good at it. But I think there's some of the other brands that could probably take stock. I think some of the Chinese have looked at obviously MG, Hyundai, Kia, again, all Asian-owned brands. But I think they're almost putting a bit of a blueprint together to say, well, look at how they've increased market share. And you can see BYD are starting to do that now. So, yeah, hugely impressive.
And I think you make a good point there about MG, because initially when they launched in the UK, that they were very much a sort of traditional petrol and diesel brand, but they have pivoted towards EV. And from what you were saying there, it sounds though they've actually got the after sales side of their business actually in line with that, and they are looking at the sort of bigger picture.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting one, because Curtis, I'm utterly convinced that was always the strategy, that was always the plan. I think buying that MG brand with the history and the legacy, and especially from a British perspective, which we all know that the Chinese love, it was an incredibly smart move. But I think the petrol and diesel sort of like strategy was only ever going to be very short-lived. Is let's buy that brand and let's turn it into an EV brand. I've got a non-exec director, Kevin Brown, who has an independent advertising agency in London called Electric Glue. He actually remembers the conversation over a glass of wine 4 or 5 years ago when I said, trust me, go and try and work with MG. You do a great job for them, because they will be the biggest EV brand in terms of the early doors, biggest EV brand that probably gets the market share early doors. And I think they've done that in the UK. So I think that was always the strategy, Curtis.
And I mean, sticking on this kind of theme of new entrants and EVs, and you and I have done, he said before, we've done work on this and consumer insight with this as well. But, MG, slightly different. They've got a bit of a legacy brand in terms of awareness, haven't they? They've bought that MG. People recognise the MG brand in the UK market particularly. Others haven't got that. Now, what what data or what are these new entrants doing around historical data? Because legacy OEMs have got, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. You can probably question whether it's good that they've got all the historical data as the transition to EV, or it could be a bad thing because they're not coming at it with a fresh lens. But what are they doing about this? And are you involved with any of those kind of conversations? And as new entrants start to try and understand the UK consumer behaviour around this adoption of EV and what they're going to do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, your big one at the moment is obviously BYD. You look at Genesis as obviously, did have or does have some combustion, but moving to EV. If you look at obviously, Hyundai, etc., I think there's a little bit of crossover with the agency model here. I think we've all seen in the last couple of days that in terms of moving to agency model, it's either being cancelled, paused, delayed. When you look at the Chinese brands, certainly BYD, I think they see the value in a franchise model and partnering with dealer groups, certainly the likes of BYD with Stratstone, because I think they know that they need that after sales support. I think the only way to keep your customers happy, and make sure that you are nurturing down the path for the next car is to make sure that they've got that franchise dealer network, they've got that support, certainly from an after sales perspective. So, you look at some of the brands that were just intending to do, a full online. Polestar now moving to obviously creating hubs, etc. As we've seen over the last couple of weeks, Genesis completely merging with Hyundai dealerships, because I think they all know that they need that franchise dealer support. So I think the agency model is definitely not something that the Chinese brands are going to be looking at doing. I think they see the franchise model as the way forward for them, for certainly helping with after sales and retention in the long run. Going back to your point about data, they don't have any. I think it's pretty obvious that they don't have any. They need data. So as an example, something that we did for Dacia very many years ago was we created, we did a campaign for them where it was all about creating data that we could feed into their CRM. We call it KMI, which is effectively keep me informed. So 4 fields of data: name, email, postcode, phone number, gaining consent on behalf of Dacia, and then feeding that data into their CRM so that when they do launches, they can effectively communicate with users, because Dacia didn't have any data at that time. BYD are probably on that mission. So there's some things I can say on this podcast and some things that I can't say.
I was hoping we get it. Yeah. I kind of knew you kept something quiet, but yeah, you're not letting it out of the bag. Okay.
Yeah, I only need a glass of wine. But yeah, so yeah, they understand that they need data, and obviously we're having some early conversations with some brands. We were having some early stage conversations with Neo, but I think they've paused. I think coming to the UK, or there certainly looks like a bit of a delay. But yeah, we're here, we're ready, and that's what we do. We're very smart as a business, and we can collect data on behalf of OEMs to make sure that we build up their CRM database.
And actually, Chris, just following on from that, you're in a really good position, aren't you? Because there was a period in automotive where new brand launches were few and far between, and I guess before the new entrants, new EV entrants, Dacia was the kind of test case. That was a significant brand that came from nowhere, part of Renault. But you've now got that experience, haven't you, that you can roll out to potentially any new brand launching in the UK. And as we know, there's a lot of them.
Absolutely. And I think that some of the new brands want to do something a bit different. As much as they want a bit of an existing blueprint of what works, they also want to be a little bit different. The great thing is about our business is, we're entrepreneurial, we're agile, we pivot very quickly, we move very quickly, and we're able to, I think, react to OEM demands, strategy, forward thinking, ideas, because we're 15 years into this, and we're pretty good at what we do.
Now, Chris, talking about forward-thinking ideas, you've done something recently that really does intrigue me, because you've rolled out this smart marketing with Sky, which targets individual customers do servicing work. I'll leave you to explain how it actually works. So maybe if you
I've
can just
tried, Chris, with him. I have attempted.
Yeah, Phil explained it to me. So, Chris, for the benefit of the listeners, if you can explain how that works, and maybe we can talk a bit more about it.
Of course, Curtis, you've done very well there. You've got a good part of it there, so you've done well. Certainly better than Philip did the first time around. I can tell you that much. So you've done well. But Philip's on it now. He does get it. No, it was. As Sky put it in their press release, Curtis, a world first. So never been done in TV advertising. So I'll try not to go into too much detail because it was a 2-year story. It actually took 2 years to get the deal done.
Right.
But in short, during COVID, I was watching Sky and I was served an ad, which was a Sky Ad Smart local TV ad, which was relevant to me, where I was living, the things that I watch and the things that I like. Now, obviously, Sky Ad Smart, in terms of it's an addressable TV product, so it can target you based on the programs that you watch, where you live, the demographic of you, the things you like, and potentially what you earn, etc. So obviously, over the last 10 or 12 years, 10 years, I think Sky have been the leader in addressable TV. So I'm sitting there watching TV, Sky TV during COVID, and thought to myself, what if they could target by the vehicle as well, i.e. the car? So what if Regit could approach Sky and we could match our vehicle data to Sky's home data in an anonymous, compliant fashion, which obviously you can do. There's platforms that do that. So you're not giving any PII data over, which is effectively personal information data. You're just matching by an anonymized data field. And then what Sky could do on the basis that they have consent to communicate, so TV ads, we have consent to communicate. If the data match was big enough, then Sky could launch a new addressable TV product in automotive, utilizing our data, as in our vehicles. So I thought, I'll take it to Sky. So I took it to Sky via my non-exec director, Kevin Brown, who's big in media and obviously knows people at Sky very well because he spends lots of money with them on behalf of their brands. And they said, your timing is really relevant. We're looking to evolve and innovate our addressable TV products. And that's the best idea that we've ever had brought to us. Let's get under an NDA and let's start to do some data matching. They had the biggest data match that they've ever had. And we matched circa just short of 2 million car owners, and their minimum in order to do a partnership was 500,000. So we absolutely smashed it.
Yeah.
We then went into data compliance, which took 14 months. So going into data compliance with Sky's compliance team and their lawyers.
I would not have liked to have been in those meetings, Chris.
Without a doubt. Bearing in mind, I'm quite impatient, Curtis, and I like to get things done. So it was extremely challenging for me. But after just short of 2 years, we signed the contract, and it's an official joint venture where Regit and my sales team and Sky and their sales team, we go out to market, approach car manufacturers, insurance companies, finance companies, anything that is automotive and lifestyle related, where brands can now advertise with Sky, not just utilizing their home data, but also targeting by the vehicle that they actually own. So we're incredibly proud of that as a team. We worked tirelessly to get that done. It's reoccurring revenue, so monthly revenues constantly coming back to us from Sky for utilizing our data on revenue share. And the plan with Sky is to grow the data to 6 million matched car owners within the next 36 months. So we are on that mission and on that track, and it's going extremely well.
So if I'm watching Sky, I'm binge watching a box set. What sort of messaging am I likely to get that's sort of specifically targeted to me as a car owner?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example across buying, selling, and maintaining. So as an example, if you're a Regit digital garage owner and we've matched the data with Sky, if for instance, let's say we've matched circa about 250,000 Ford owners, or 200,000 Ford owners, an example, that would be great for Ford to go to Sky and say, we would like to target Ford owners who are due a service, MOT, or a fairly high mileage car, or they're a second owner, third owner, fourth owner, because we would like to serve them some after sales adverts, etc., etc. And then effectively what Ford do was launch a TV campaign via Sky around after sales, and effectively targeting Ford owners that are due a service or an MOT, or a second owner, third owner, fourth owner, etc., etc. So incredibly smart, addressable TV advertising where they could now target by vehicle. If you're an electric car brand, as an example, and we've got on our data, we've got users who are reading electric vehicle content, maybe reading vehicle content about BYD, other electric brands, etc. We can actually send information to Sky in real time to say, this audience of 750,000 are interested in an EV. They are reading EV content around Chinese brands or around any other legacy brands. They are doing a ULEZ check. They are doing a valuation, etc., etc. So to launch electric vehicle TV advertising for someone like, BYD or any other brands, MG, etc., etc., they could do TV advertising now targeting by the vehicle that you own. So a combustion engine, a diesel car, a petrol car, a hybrid car, or reading EV content. If you were selling someone like Motorway, who are another partner of ours, they could do a TV campaign with Sky and target vehicle owners who are potentially interested in selling their car, i.e. they've done a valuation on Regit. So we can feed all this information back to Sky in real time to create the right audiences for the right brand in terms of the right targeting and messaging that they want to do across buying, selling and maintaining.
So in short then, have you got that, Curtis?
Yeah, I totally understand it now.
From the horse's mouth.
Yeah. Was that explained easily enough, Curtis?
I mean, it really is clever, smart marketing, isn't it? And really geared towards the individual. And I like the way that you can actually target reminders on servicing to individual households.
Yeah, it is. It's extremely smart, and we're incredibly proud. And the team at Regit worked tirelessly to get that done. So we're not now all of a sudden we're a business that's not just operating in the digital media landscape, with ad agencies and OEMs. We're now operating in the TV landscape in a joint venture with Sky. So yeah, I'm incredibly proud of that. And there's obviously other areas we're now looking at, which interestingly is radio, music, social. So there's other areas now where the light bulb moment has gone off in terms of what we've done in TV, and now what can we do in other areas with other big brands.
You'll have a podcast next, Curtis, if we're not careful.
Yeah.
I mean, just to close up, just finally. I mean, we're at the start of March now. Big build up for the first plate of the new year. I'm not quite sure how big the new plate is these days. Back in our day, Chris, we won't go that far back, with the August plates. I mean, in terms of, how do you think dealers should be, and it's back to sort of the earlier question in terms of advice, but, dealers building on in after sales retention as part of that new car sales process, because, March and September, however big or small year on year, are still the biggest peaks each year in terms of that new car marketplace, and you get the used car activity on the back of it. But it's a case of, how do you, it starts from the beginning, doesn't it, this retention? You don't wait 3 years and then try and retain them after 3 years. You've got to start from day one. What advice would you share to listeners of what they should be thinking about?
Yeah, so I think recently we've seen, JLR obviously pausing the agency model. But I think it's really important that in order to support the dealer network, certainly with new plate change, as you've mentioned, is car manufacturers need to get back to being a little bit braver. They need to be honest, and they are still building ICE cars. They are still selling ICE cars. The dealer network needs as much support as they can to sell as many cars as they possibly can, whether that's petrol, diesel, EV, hybrid. But I think there's a fear factor that's come in place where car manufacturers are absolutely terrified to advertise the fact that they're still building and selling petrol and diesel cars. But these cars are a lot greener. We've got the greenest cars we've ever had, and the transition to EV needs to be sensible and achievable, where car owners might not be able to buy an EV or a hybrid, but it might be a cleaner diesel or a cleaner petrol. So for me, car manufacturers need to get back to marketing and advertising and spending money on promoting the fact that they are still building and selling these petrol and diesel cars. The downstream of that is that benefits dealers in so many ways. It obviously benefits them in terms of new car sales, approved used car sales, which then the knock-on effect to that is making sure that there's enough cars coming back into the dealer network for servicing, for warranty work, for parts, for accessories, etc., etc., etc. So, I think this is probably the quietest, new registration month that we've seen in terms of car manufacturers not spending the money that they once spent on the fact that they are building ICE cars and needing to sell ICE cars as well as EVs and hybrids. So I'd like to see us get back to a little bit of where we once were, and car manufacturers being a little bit braver in order to support their dealer network, because that's what they need to do.
No, I think there's like you say, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of plates spinning at the minute, but as you say, JAL are deferring the transition to agency. It's obviously the opportunity that they focus on other things, because it's there's a lot to focus on. But I knew it'd be a pleasure to have you on today. I think one was sharing a little bit more insight into what Regit does as a business and where you are within the sector. Some of the insight that you managed to get hold of, whether that's the EV space, the aftermarket space, and new entrants versus legacy OEMs, etc. So I think there's a lot going on, and it'll be great to see and get you back on at some point in the future when a little bit more time with this Sky partnership and how it's changing, and maybe some of the activity and data that you're seeing around that as you sort of start to build that, and on the transition to 6 million.
Absolutely.
There's a big road ahead. So it's been a pleasure having you on, as I knew it would be. So I appreciate you joining us today, Chris, and sharing some of your knowledge.
I've really enjoyed it, and I just want to say thank you so much, Curtis. Thank you, Philip, and I'll love to see you guys soon. Bit of lunch, maybe.
Yes.
That sounds like a date to me, Chris. So
you know what'll happen, Chris? Me and you have been talking about it for God knows how long. Curtis will just do it, and next I will still be waiting. He'll just join you. He does that.
Well, me and Curtis will send you a selfie.
Yeah.
Doggy bag.
Glasses in hand. Well, Chris, many thanks for your time. Really appreciate you sharing your views and insight on what's happening in after sales. But that is all we've got time for this week. So many thanks for tuning into this special weekday interview with Chris Ashton-Green. Philip and I are back with the week's big car retailing headlines on Saturday. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to this special weekday Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. Philip and Curtis will be back with the week's big motor retailing headlines on Saturday. Live, on demand, wherever you are, on your podcast feed.